Hi there. I'll bet you like cookies as well as I do. In fact, I think everyone likes cookies. But people get concerned sometimes because cookies seem to be very sweet and high in calories and maybe not too nutritious. So today I'd like to show you some ideas about some cookies that you can make that still taste sweet but have a lot more nutrition in them because we've added some extra ingredients and decreased some of the sweetness. The first one I'd like to make is a cookie called apple and cheese oatmeal cookies. Now that sounds like a strange combination to put into cookies, but oatmeal, of course, is the base for a lot of different kinds of cookies, and oatmeal really is quite nutritious. It's a whole grain cereal. I have here some examples of these cookies. They look sort of lumpy because they have raisins in them and they have apples, but both of those things are fruits, and they give us added nutrition in the form of the fruits. They also add some flavor. These cookies have cheese in them too, which adds some more protein and does add a little extra flavor. In fact, you could even eat these cookies for breakfast. Now, to help us get started, I have already mixed up part of the dough, and I'll tell you about the ingredients in this, but I won't give you the recipe because it's sort of long. And if you like the recipe, you can contact us at the Cooperative Extension Office. This has flour and soft margarine or butter, or you could use shortening. Then we've put in only 1/3 cup of brown sugar. Now that doesn't seem like very much sugar for a batch of cookies, but this takes 1/3 cup. And eggs, some vanilla, cinnamon, baking powder, and salt. And I've mixed this all together so it's in a soft mixture and it's all ready to go. You can do this with a spoon, or you can mix it together with an electric mixer, however you want to do it. But this is the flour, margarine, sugar, egg, vanilla, and the seasonings all mixed together in the bowl. Now we're going to add 1.5 cups of oats, and these are rolled oats. This is not oatmeal that you've cooked up for breakfast. This is the oats before they're cooked. And in this particular recipe, you can use either the oats that are the quick variety or the old-fashioned oats. It doesn't really make very much difference. Now you'll notice the dough is going to get quite stiff, and this is what we want. So it holds its shape, but try to mix them in fairly well. And then we're going to add 1 cup of shredded cheese. Now I'll bet you never thought about putting cheese in cookies. So this makes them almost like snack crackers, but actually they're a little bit sweeter than that. And I'm going to mix in the cheese. And you could use white cheese if you wanted to, Monterey Jack or a white cheddar. I'm using a yellow cheddar, and once the cookies are cooked you can't see it very well anyway, so they don't really show up too well. Then I want to add about 1/2 cup of raisins, and we'll just sort of guess on the raisins. If you don't like raisins, you can leave them out, or you could add nuts, which also add extra nutrition. And of course the raisins start making the dough even more lumpy. And then we're going to add an apple. And I'm going to cut this apple and then chop it in my little chopping bowl. I'll put the ends here in this dish that had the cheese in it. If you have one of those apple choppers or nut choppers, this would be a good way to do it. Or you could even run it through a grater or in your blender, but sometimes we forget to turn the stop button soon enough and we have apple mush instead of apple chunks. But you want it chopped up fairly small. And I'm going to do this in my handy dandy little food chopper. This is one of my favorite kitchen utensils. Takes no electricity, works quite well because it keeps your food in the bowl unless I get very excited and chop too fast. And if you have a curved knife of any type, an uluk or something of that sort, get somebody to make you a bowl that just fits the bottom of the knife, and then you can do this yourself. It's great for chopping nuts or whatever. We have a lot of special gadgets on the market today that chop and slice and do a lot of things for us, but they take electricity. And anytime you plug in that appliance, you're going to have to pay for it, besides paying for the appliance in the first place. But you pay for the use of it. So this may take a little bit longer and may not be quite as glamorous, but it does the job. And all it takes is just a little bit of elbow grease on your part to chop it up. No electricity. So it only costs your time, and it doesn't take that much time. Now I've chopped this fairly fine, and I'm going to put in the apple. And you notice I didn't peel it. I'm using a Jonathan apple. I'd recommend you not use a delicious apple because they get very soft and mushy. But the apple does have enough moisture in it that it adds some of the extra moisture. The only moisture in this mixture is 1 egg. We have not added any milk or water or any of that sort of thing. Just an egg, which was in the original dough, which I showed you at the very beginning. Now we have in our cookie raisins and apples and oatmeal and cheese, which you could put together in a mixture that would be very good for making hot cereal for breakfast. But we're putting it with some other things that we can use for cookies. Now I want to put these on a small cookie sheet, and we'll see if we can get them baked so we can see what they look like. I guess I can use this larger spoon and not. These use an ungreased cookie sheet. And we'll put a few down on this. They're sort of lumpy, as I mentioned before, and you're going to have to sort of push them together. But the dough is soft, and it will hold the ingredients quite well. I mentioned I didn't peel the apple. You can peel the apple if you want to. So don't feel that you have to have apple peelings in here if you don't want them, but they cook up soft and you don't really need to worry about it at all. And they add a little bit of extra color. Okay, now we have our cookies on the pan, and we'll go ahead and put them in the oven. Now this particular oven, we don't have the temperature as hot, and I don't have it set on the timer. So we'll just sort of watch the cookies. Because this is a convection oven, we don't turn the temperature up as hot for baking, and we use it at a lower temperature. If you're doing it at home, the recipe recommends 375 for the temperature. So this is our apple cookies. You could add apples, raisins, and oats to most any basic cookie recipe, but remember this one started out with only 1/3 cup of sugar, and most of your cookie recipes take 2/3 to a cup or more of sugar. So it does cut down the sweetness, and we add the sweetness with raisins and apples. Those give us the extra sweetness taste. Now, get the dough off my fingers that I ended up with. Okay, another cookie idea is a carrot cookie, and I have 2 different carrot cookies here to show you, and each one is made a little differently. This particular one uses raw carrots. Now, carrots also are nutritious. They have a lot of vitamin A in them and some other vitamins, and I have in the bottom of my bowl here 1/2 cup of shortening that I'm creaming to make it soft. It was fairly soft to start with, but I'm sort of beating it up with this scraper. Now I want to add to this 1 cup of grated carrots. And I have here some grated carrots, which were in piece of wax paper, and they've gotten soft, and gotten the wax paper all soft. The carrots were moist to start with. If you leave something in wax paper very long, it soaks through the paper. So we want a cup of grated carrots, and I'm going to add those to the shortening. We'll just pour those right in. Save the other carrots. You can put them in a salad or something. I'm sort of messy today here. I have stuff all over. That happens when you cook. I guess you have to expect to be messy sometime. Now mix that with the shortening, and then I have a cup of honey. And I've warmed the honey so it would pour a little more easily, because honey, when it's cool, doesn't pour real well. Now this looks like a strange sticky mess, and it's sort of hard to put together. The honey is the sweetener in this particular mixture. Now we want to add to that 2 eggs which have been beaten, and they can be beaten with a wire whip, or you can use a fork if you don't have one of these fancy kinds of things. It's just to get the yolks and the whites together a little bit better, and we'll mix that in. Now this is another cookie that isn't ultra sweet, although we've added more honey than we added the sugar in the last recipe. Now again, we're going to use oats, but we're also going to add some flour to this. And the first set of dry ingredients is 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of soda, and 1/2 each a teaspoon of cinnamon and nutmeg, and that gives us our flavorings. So I'll just pour this in. I have it already measured out with the seasonings and so forth. And you want to stir this carefully, because otherwise you're going to have a mess all over. Now some people find that it takes time to make cookies, and it does, but of course you can make a lot at one time, and you really can save a lot by making your own cookies. If you're looking toward the cost of them, most cookies can be made with ingredients you have right in your kitchen. You usually have flour and baking powder and salt and sugar, and then some of these other things like carrots and cheese and apples. You probably have some of that. And of course, by making them, you know that you can cut down on the amount of sugar that you're putting in, or you can sort of vary the ingredients the way you want them and not have them just ultra sweet as they might be if you purchase them from the store. We do have some good nutritious cookies which are available at the store also, but usually you can save by making your own. Now we have a little bit more to add. We're going to add 2 cups of rolled oats. I like rolled oats for cookies. They seem to fit into cookies real well. They're a good extender. They bake well, and they're just sort of a favorite for this kind of thing. Now if you like raisins, you can add some raisins to this, and again you're adding some extra sweetness and flavor, and you're adding some extra nutrition from the raisins. Raisins are fairly high in iron, and some people are concerned about the amount of iron they get, so you can add raisins. These aren't raisins, these are some nuts, which I'm going to add for some extra crunch and a little bit of extra color. What happened to our raisins? We'll put a few raisins in. A recipe usually tells you how many raisins to put in, like a cup or 1/2 cup or something. But I find that a lot of times I just sort of put in what I have or what I think I want to put in. You could also add dates, and I suppose you could add chocolate chips, but then you're getting back to the extra sweetness. Now you'll notice that this is a very stiff dough, and any of these doughs, once you mix them up, you could put them in the freezer. You could put them in a paper and freeze them and save them till later. So if you want to have a mix-up day and not have any cooking, you can do that. So here's our dough already, and we'll put it on a pan, keeping an eye on the ones in there. Now this particular pan is not as flat as some pans that we want to use for baking. So if you have a pan of this sort, you can bake on the bottom of it. Now that sounds sort of crazy, but it is possible to bake on the bottom of it, and you may want to grease it or not grease it. If you're concerned about it and you don't want to get the bottom of your pan dirty, you can take the pan, so you have something solid, and then put some aluminum foil on the bottom. Then you won't have to wash your pan. You see, you can just throw the foil away. Need a spoon. All right, we'll put some of these on here. And again, these would cook at 350 or 375. Practically all cookies cook at that temperature. We may not be able to get all of these done, but at least it will give you an idea of some kinds of things you can do. You do not always have to have just a plain old oatmeal cookie, or do you always have to have just a plain very sweet cookie, but you can have these with the extra ingredients that add extra nutrition. Now we'll see if we can share this with our pan that is in here. I knew I had a pot holder someplace. I'm not sure we can get the door shut. Oh, we can. Good. All right, that gives us two kinds of cookies, and we're cooking them both at the same time. If you have a larger oven, you can have 2 racks, and you can get a lot of your cooking done all at once. And remember, once you start out making these, just keep putting them back in. Have an extra pan, put the cookies on it, and put them in so you don't waste any electric heat, because again, you're paying for that. Now very quickly, we have one other set of dough, cookie dough, that I'd like to show you, because this one can be used again with a lot of different kinds of ingredients. This again is also a carrot cookie, and we are starting out with a cup of shortening and 3/4 cup of sugar, and I have that in the bottom of my pan, and again, well, bowl I guess. Again, I have mixed this together so that it's soft. This process is called creaming. I don't know why. It must come from creaming, you know, mixing cream into something, but it gives you a creamy, soft mixture. And this one isn't as soft maybe as you'd want it. This bowl is a little harder to deal with too. Okay, now to this mixture, I'm going to add a couple eggs. And in this instance, I can just break them right in. Eggs don't break on the edge of a plastic bowl very easily either. I've had problems with that before. And if you're one of those people that can break an egg with one hand, that's pretty neat. I've never been able to do that. I should practice sometime, I guess, but I'm afraid I'd have eggs all over the floor. Now it takes a little while to mix this in, and if you have an electric mixer, you may find that it does it a little bit easier. Eggs are sort of slippery, and so is the shortening, so to get the two together doesn't always work real well. And you just have to keep stirring. And again, you'll notice that I'm doing these by hand, and if I'm making a large batch, I'll probably use an electric mixer, but a lot of people may not have a mixer that's big enough to handle these very thick doughs. And I find usually by the time you get down to adding the last ingredients to your dough, you're going to have to use a spoon anyway, because they're just too thick and it's too hard on your mixer. Particularly if you have a little hand mixer, you probably won't get much beyond this stage because it's just too thick. You won't be able to do it. I'm trying to stir this in. It's getting there. Okay, now I'm going to add to this 1 cup of mashed carrot. These were some canned carrots which I mashed up. You can also use pumpkin. You could use applesauce. You can cook up some carrots and use cooked carrots, but it's a cooked mixture. The cookies we just mixed up had raw carrots in them. So this particular recipe, you could add all kinds of things. And of course, this is going to give us a nice orange looking mixture because of the carrots. I just mashed the carrots with a fork. They're a little more lumpy perhaps than if I had pureed them through a sieve or something like that. So if you want them real soft, you could do that. Now I'm going to add to this flour, baking powder, and salt, which I have measured out ahead of time. And here we're going to stir a little bit more carefully so I don't have flour all over. At least I found a larger bowl. I seem to be very good at mixing things in a bowl that isn't big enough. Now our mixture is going to get a little stiffer, and this one doesn't have any rolled oats in it. This one just has flour. But this particular recipe, again, only used 3/4 of a cup of sugar, which is less than many call for. And we've added the carrots, which will add extra nutrition, particularly vitamin A, which you would also get if you used pumpkin or any of the yellow squashes. This is stiff and it always takes a little while. Now for some extra sweet flavor, I want to make sure we're not burning our cookies. I'm going to add some coconut. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup, but I'm not going to put in quite that much. And you could leave it out. It's not necessary to add the coconut, except it does add that little bit of extra flavor. It does add some sweetness and taste, but not too much sweetness in just sugar content. So I've mixed in the coconut. You could also add to this recipe nuts, raisins, dried fruit of any kind if you wanted to. Most of your basic cookie doughs, you can add those kinds of things that are going to give you extra nutrition and extra flavor, and just start out with the basic dough. So here's the dough for this one, which uses a cooked carrot rather than the raw grated carrot. Now let's see what's happening back here. We have some of our apple cookies are finished. And these are the ones that have the apple and cheese and raisins in them. And cinnamon, I can smell the cinnamon. Now I'm going to use the same pan to put these other cookies on. And we won't have them finished for you to see, but you can see what they look like in the dough stage. I'll put these on and we'll stick them in the oven real quickly. These look very pretty. The orange is quite attractive. So if you want to have a cookie baking day, you can just make lots of different kinds. Let me remind you again the types that we have here that are extra nutritious and maybe not quite as sweet as some of the kinds that you've been making. We have our oatmeal base, which has apples and raisins and cheese in it. And of course you could use other kinds of ingredients if you wanted to, because this is sort of an interesting mixture. And you could leave out the cheese, or you could leave out, something else. And here are the cookies that are baked from that particular batch. We have the ones that we did with the grated carrot in them, and those are cooking, and I'll see if I can get them out in just a minute. And then the last ones that we did, which have the mashed carrot in them, and of course you could use pumpkin or squash or applesauce or something, some type of fruit. In fact, these probably would work real well with bananas if you wanted to have a banana cookie. Let's see, these aren't real brown, but I think they're done enough so we can look at them. They don't flatten out, they just keep their shape. And these are the ones with the shredded carrot. And you see I've baked them on the bottom of this pan upside down on aluminum foil. No washing of pan. I don't like to wash dishes very well, and I don't imagine most people do, so if you can find a way to do it without, that's pretty neat. So here's our 3 kinds of cookies. Using extra vegetables in them for extra nutrition, oatmeal, and less sugar. And I think you'll find that if you want to try these, they're really tasty and extra nutritious too. The recipes for these are available through the Cooperative Extension Service. Just call our office at 543-2503 here in Bethel, and you can get the recipes or stop by and we'll have them ready for you. I hope you'll try making more nutritious cookies. They can save you money in the long run and add extra nutrition to your family's eating, besides tasting good any time of day.